Below the thundering waves and rocky Alaska's most merciless cliffs, miners are afraid of the wilderness. Tread, they refer to it as Death Canyon. It has engulfed men whole for years. Broken dreams and claim machines. However, one guy defies all obstacles and dares to overcome it. One of the unrelenting treasure hunter has carried out the unimaginable. In the shadow of lethal streams and crumbling stone, he has discovered an incredible wealth, a $120 million prize taken directly from actual Death Canyon. However, how did he endure where others died? How much did it cost him to steal gold from the most deadly trap in nature's jaws? And what secrets are possibly the most unsettling remain hidden beneath the murky waters of Canyon? This is not merely a tale of gold. It's an obsessional tale, peril as well as survival. Prior to our descent into the center of this horrifying explosion, be sure to subscribe and come with us, since what you're going to witness is not like any other witness in thrush for gold. There are locations in Alaska where the natural world doesn't only test thing eats men. Death Canyon as well as among those locations, sculpted over millennia by ferocious ice torrents and water, with walls that rise sharply tombstones, encroaching on the thundering gravel beneath it. The untrained eye perceives it as just another canyon. However, to the guys who have experienced its fury, it eyes something much darker. A maze of concealed vortices, suffocating currents, each rock that falls, where the earth itself appears determined to ingest those who dare to interfere. They whisper the stories. Late at night at the mining camps, men ever seen, dragged under in a matter of seconds once more. Whole crews were left stranded when escape is blocked off by landslides. Devastation split in two. Their remains are rusting as gloomy reminders. The canyon is more than merely fearful. It is revered as if it were living, protecting any hidden secrets far below its frigid seas. However, forfeit was never an excuse for Dustin Hurt to go back. Death Canyon was, to him, more than a gorge that kills. It was a challenge, with a wall separating him and immense riches. Additionally, Dustin has consistently been a guy who lives on challenges. Odds. Some refer to it as bravery, while others laud bellistiness, yet Dustin refers to it as fate. His resolve is the driving force behind not simply gold mania. It has aspiration honed over years of residing in the shadow of his father. Hurt, Dakota Fred, the renowned miner, etched his name, putting everything on the line to enter the gold rushy, in search of treasure. Regarding Dustin, there was more to this canyon than just wealth. It was about establishing his own worth, demonstrating Thea was a leader in addition to being Fred's son. Independently, the canyon, in numerous ways, turned into a battleground, not just against legacy, but against nature. However, Dustin pushed in his unrelenting pursuit, his team to the limit. Strained bonds, betrayal rumors, and a breakdown in trust emerged as males started asking questions. If their lives were worth gold. Death Canyon was able to reveal not only the rock's brilliance, but the loyalty's brilliance. However, Dustin pushed ahead, since, to him, withdrawal signified failure, not only in mining, but also in life. Thus, the lines of battle were drawn. Father against water, man against in shadow, survival versus ambition. Silently, the canyon waited. Its dark waterways that could be hiding wealth or a grave. Obsession, however, never goes to sleep, and Dustin would soon learn that Death Canyon keeps its secrets to itself without resistance. Next, we adhere to Dustin's constant risk-taking, the instant when danger becomes a fixation and infatuation turned into a life issue and demise. Death Canyon is typically the line's end. Its currents steer confidence, its quiet undermines bravery, and its past cautions against avarice. However, most men are not Dustin Hurt, where Dustin saw what others saw, myth and suffering, a rare chance that demanded all of his possessions. He staked his wealth, his standing, and his crew's devotion, as well as his own life, based on a conviction that there under the ice canyon there were unexplored gold veins in the waters, veins with the power to change his legacy forever. The gamble didn't work out, not just his stamina, but his authority as a head. Every choice turned into a razor's edge. A single misstep might crush equipment, shut down the business, or take a human life, much worse. The men well knew the dangers of following him, yet as the risks increased, so did the uncertainties. Was Dustin pulling them down or guiding them to glory them in the direction of catastrophe? The distinction between obsession and ambition became hazy with each plunge down into the seething abyss. Divers dove into sufficiently frigid waters to halt the human heart. Their outfits hardly managed to escape the numbing clutches of flow of water. Overhead, rocks moved, abruptly crumbling and posing a threat to bury them alive. Hoses for oxygen twisted, strained ropes in each and every second. I wanted to play chess with Demis, Dustin observed from the outside, knowing every dive, clenching fists might be the final one. The canyon wreck were at little authority. However, it provided him nothing but mayhem in exchange. However, I was pushed by more than just the Canyon. Family was involved. Dakota, Dustin's father, had made a name for himself by being brave. Dangers and intense treasure. Searches. Dustin was torn as he grew up in the shadow, between adoration and disobedience. He was now in the center of death. Canyon. Striving to find gold, but also to demonstrate his ability to come out from behind his father's heritage and inspire reverence for in his own terms. That quiet pressure, unspoken, weighed as much as the stones, moving under the boots of the divers. And then, as the canyon appeared unstoppable, a miracle emerged. Specks of gold started to show up in the gravel. Modest at first, but indisputable. In opposition to bitter cold, in contrast to the canyon's, there was evidence of rage, evidence that life could be worthwhile to gamble. The men who used hot outed were now quiet, gazing at pans, knowing that they were standing on the brink of something remarkable. However, this sparkle was just the start, because each gold particle brought with it aquarie that weighed more than the water itself. How far would they go? Must travel to retrieve it. Next, we had here told initial genuine indications of treasure. That the instant when gold dust changed into hope, and the prospect of a jackpot started to overshadow terror within Death Canyon. It always starts out tiny, with a slight gleam in a glimmer of brightness amidst the shadow. Share shouldn't be any. For Dustin Hurt, and there were some golden flecks among his team, holding on to the dark granite of the canyon, small pieces that would appear to outsiders as nothing. However, for experienced miners, those specks had a tale to tell. Gold doesn't disperse without cause. Dust is an indication, a murmur from the ground that below, something bigger is waiting, for those who have the courage or need to take it. As more was added to the pans, suddenly, skepticism gave way to wonder. What transformed from a trickle to a stream? Flakes are getting richer, heavier, and bigger. Every pan swirl validated what Dustin had wagered both his wealth and his life on. Death Canyon wasn't a desolate place. It was concealing something remarkable. The quiet that once descended like a curse shattered beneath the sound of rocks being struck by shovels, the sound of pumps, gravel removal, and the frantic hasty of men picking at layers that haven't been centuries. Hope for the first time overshadowed fear. The renown of the canyon, like a damp tomb, started to slant underneath weight of potential. However, hope is his artist. It causes as much blindness as it motivates. As they went farther, the more danger drew near. Bank collapse suspects a threat to advancement. Rope stressed by unrelenting currents. The machines moaned, hammered by the canyon's ruthless hold. The gold was sexual, but the canyon refused to give up. Without a struggle of the crew, tensions boiled. Men who had previously doubted Dustin's fixation now hung extracted from the pebbles on each nugget. Their beliefs partially changed to devotion, but in the direction of avarice. Gold possesses a method of transforming men, transforming allies into competitors, and devotion into something far waker. Dustin sensed the fracture. Establishing themselves among the ranks. Was his crew following him because you trust him, or because you are they hungry for what's under their boots? And throughout it all, the family shadow loomed. Dustin could practically hear his voice of a father. Legends are like this. Created, son. However, legends are not inexpensive. The weight was carried by each shovel of soil. Danger. Each nugget serves as a reminder that the distinction between success and failure was really thin. However, the assurance was too fantastic to overlook. They were positioned on the brink of something enormous, possibly event the actual history. However, the canyon wasn't completed evaluating them as each dazzling find. The ground appeared to strengthen its hold, ready to let it loose its wrath. Death Canyon will soon follow, would retaliate more forcefully than before previously. The canyon continues to maintain its secrets with ease. Dustin Hurt's moment workers started extracting more than just dust from depths. The terrain appeared to get up. As though incensed about the infringement, Death Canyon retaliated. Rock falls inexplicably crashed, stone walls falling with the sound into the lake of thunder. Men rushed to get their wells, sandwiched by rocky rocks and a torrent that appeared intent on pulverizing them to nothing. Ropes broke like fragile branches, pulling divers into the currents in order to strong enough to tear a man from hisserness. In a matter of seconds, The machines moaned, stopped and clogged as though th. The machines moaned, stopped and clogged as though th. The canyon itself plotted to disrupt the process, separate. Every minute dragged into Erisk with fate, where a single mistake cow designed to die. For each ounce of gold wrestled out of the canyon, and the gravel man at a price in sweat, blood, and close to offering a sacrifice. Whispers started to spread via the crew, ominous reports that they had roused an old force, something it intended for unearthing. Men cursed in the roaring sea. They heard voices, sensed invisible hands pulling on their equipment, observed shadows shifting in opposition to the canyon walls where no one was present. To them, this was more than just a threat. It was a curse, one that refused to let its wealth taken without repercussions. However, there was never a retreat. Dustin had too much was staked. His wealth, his pride, his own identity upon violating the canyon's hold. To retreat at this time would not merely signify failure. That would imply humiliation, giving up, and losing all he had struggled to establish. The tension increased among his crew with each collapse. A few males desired out, others desired more. Faithfulness broken as aspiration clashed with fear. Dustin's power was put to the test at requiring him to balance at every move, strength, influence, and desperation just to prevent the collapse of his team. However, there was gold. It glistened just underneath the surface, referring to them as darker, deeper, and into areas that no miner had ventured to go. The canyon pushed more forcefully, the men resisted, and the weak gap between success and failure widened, getting thinner every day. Dustin was aware of the dangers. He was aware that every step he took encouraged a second attack from the canyon's ridge. However, ambition speaks louder rather than terror. Thus, they excavated and they dived, certain that something the extraordinary awaited. What they discovered that every uncertainty and start a craze that isn't like anything previously observed. The canyon's final reward, a jackpot that surpasses reality. Following weeks of suffering, when the canyon appeared to be about to collapse, it gave way at last to each desire. In a rhythmus raging in shifting gravel waters, the crew of Dustin Hurt hits a method that no miner in the world had ever envisioned. It was a gleam at first, then a torrent, not specks, but nuggets started to emerge. Some that are as large as some were the size of fists, while others were pebbles. Pulling from the abyss, each one glistened with a fortune's weight. It was an unreal moment. Men would remain motionless in that canyon, facing death, hands that are rough, silent, scarred, and trembling and damaged. They possessed the power of fate itself. The gold that they were risking everything was genuine. It's so real it appeared nearly impossible. Hardened Edmunders after decades of pursuing elusive promises where finding yourself in the midst of a dream. It's true. When the total was determined, the figure was astounding. More than $120 million in gold torn out of Death's Canyon. A prize that exceeded not just all the chances they had taken, but each and every uncertainty, each treachery, and each muttered curse. Dustin's experience was more than triumph. It was confirmation, evidence may create a legend of his own that could be placed next to, or even over the legacy of his father's shadow. However, glory rarely comes free of cost. As the amount of gold increased, so did the discomfort. Men started looking at one another in a different way. Was this a trust that still binds brothers, or a tenuous partnership maintained only by greed? In the radiance of newly acquired prosperity, suspicion increased, ambition hardened, and quiet of the canyon seemed to reverberate with a caution. This important product doesn't come free. Despite his victory, Dustin felt the pressure of the weight. Indeed, they had conquered the canyon. Indeed, they had dragged its treasure into the light. However, in his heart, he was aware of a darker hung on. This canyon refused to give up without justification. For each fate, it demanded something in exchange for what it offered. Thus, the query plagued all men. Who was it that touched that gold? Was it really a blessing, the sort of miracle that people hoped for off never seen? Or was it an omen or a curse, that what they'd roused would come next long after they emerged from its depths? Next, we reveal the actual expense of wealth, the wounds, the sacrifices, and shadows that accompanied Dustin's victory, as well as the terrifying reminder that nothing is ever really free. Canyon, unimaginable wealth frequently appears, together with shadows. Regarding Dustin's $120 million wealth was Hurt from Death Canyon demonstrated his victory. However, amid the radiance of triumph, no amount of wealth could warm that chill. The canyon had paid its price already, near fatal incidents. Broken men with bodily scars and machinery and soul. standing between triumph and tragedy adjacent to one another. Every piece of gold burdened by the recollection of how they were so close to never going living. The camp was filled with whispers, like smoke. Some claimed to have heard voices reverberating across the canyon at night, soft and agitated, as if the rocks themselves desolate their encroachment. Others noticed shadows shifting in opposition to Thewles without any hands, or men standing as they dove. They tugged at their suits. For doubters, it was fatigue, paranoia, the result of extended periods of frothless waters. However, to those Watat it was something more sinister, something indicating that they hadn't discovered a treasure they had taken from a cemetery of departed souls. Thady mistrust started to rip at Thekru. Men who used to applaud each golden haul now looked doubtfully at one another. Waste wealth they extracted from the canyon, either a boon or a bane that would follow them indefinitely. Loyalty can be bent by gold, of course, converting supporters into adversaries. And Dustin could sense it. His ability to lead was put to the test. Like never before, torn between aspiration, gain, and the eerie cost that accompanied it. Next came Thelist, but not least, Death Canyon never lets go. As they were getting ready to depart, accidents happened once more. Apparatus failure without cause, fraying ropes at the worst situation imaginable. At one last our camp was almost buried by a LANDSLIP. It was a coincidence to some, but to others, revenge. In any event, the canyon sent its message rather plainly. Its wealth was never intended for casual use. Fourth victory was genuine, Dustin, but so wait. He was the big winner, created his own mythology and put a stop to every uncertainty that hung over his name. However, he had the noticeable scars on him and concealed, which gold could never remove. Furthermore, after the dust had cleared and the bags of thief luck were sealed, a terrifying query hung on. What would Death's legacy be? Can Canyon really be? Next, we face theory heritage of luck and terror. That'll of how Dustin's victory turned into myth. And the reason for the quiet in the canyon remains terrifying to those who dare to dream off gold. Her attack in Death Canyon by Dustin will be regarded as among the greatest, riskiest achievements in contemporary history of mining. To raise $120 million gold from a location where men possessed, where machinery had malfunctioned, and where the natural world appeared intent on kill, was nothing less than remarkable. It was not just a jackpot, it was a conflict with unachievable, a battle that combined aspiration obviously and etched Dustin's name into the harsh foundation of myth. But gold alone does not create legends. The wounds that never go away are what make them fade. Each and every man who went down into that canyon did more than just carry out riches. He held recollections of near misses, of friends almost lost, of times when survival was in jeopardy. The triumph was unquestionable, but the expenses were also. For some, the cost was still fear. Clung for a long while after the machines had stopped. Down. Others saw it as the eerie fear that they had violated a prohibited line, tore a sacred object from a location that was never intended to exist. Agitated. Dustin also has that weight. He found the strike to be more than cash. It was proof against anybody who questioned him, evidence that Heck could forge a route beyond the shade-off mythology of his father. However, even infinitely, he is aware of the reality. The canyon took what was given. It required loyalty, put bonds to the test, and sowed separation. Betrayal, ambition, and power each had fulfilled their part. The Goldies, it sparkles in the records. But the Death Canyon's tale is as much about survival as a matter of luck. And now Canyon is once again at peace. Its waters roar, its walls remain quiet, protecting what her mysteries are within it. However, history demonstrates that quiet never endures. Fortune's allure never goes away. Additionally, Dustin's striking story will make calls to other people. Fresh visionaries, fresh miners, fresh competitors who think they can enemy the canyon and assert that it is secret. Reward. However, this is where the chill inquiry. Will they be lucky, or will they arouse the same rage that Dustin Hurt? His guys were almost buried. As Death Canyon isn't finished, it's a pause is all that quiet is. Additionally, some place the following chapter in those murky waters of apprehension and good fortune is already in. Wait till be composed, and is already in. Wait till be composed.